Right. Speaking of Vikings, I got to get to this story. And I just want, you know what I want being a Minnesota Vikings fan? I want 1 week. I want 1 week where there is nothing going on off the field, where you can just talk about the actual game on Sunday. And I don't know that we're going to get there this year, because this thing's not going away anytime soon. Tom Johnson, first of all, defensive tackle for the Vikings, got tased and arrested for getting drunk at a steakhouse in downtown Minneapolis 7. Refusing to leave. Tom's a rather big gentleman, so they had to subdue him and then subsequently arrested him. And if you haven't already heard, which I'm sure you probably have, prosecutors in Montgomery County, Texas, have filed paperwork to have Adrian Peterson's bail revoked and the Minnesota Vikings running back rearrested after he told the drug tester that he had recently smoked marijuana before taking a urinalysis test Wednesday. According to the filing signed by Bill Delmore, the assistant district attorney for the state of Texas, Peterson admitted to the worker that he had, quote, smoked a little weed, unquote, before the test, not taking any illegal drugs or common terms to adhere to when out on bond. And that is from Ben Gessling of ESPN.com. When I read the story, and the first thing that came to my mind was Adrian Peterson is an absolute moron if he really did that, and it appears, sadly, that he has done that, and that he really did do that. And it's sad, and it's moronic on 2 levels. Number one, of course, there's the issue of you smoking weed when you're out on bond, and you've got literally millions and millions of dollars hanging in the balance. Staying clean is the easiest part of this whole equation, and he failed to do that. And then number 2, admitting it to the urinalysis tester, like, hey, I'm coming clean, no pun intended. Now maybe we can just skip the test. I don't know what his motivation to do that was, but it was dumb on all counts. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, the Wills are put out Adrian Peterson on the NFL the commissioner's exempt list, and they did that. I think they've never really defined exactly what their intention was, but I believe that their intention was, when this thing resolved itself, in the off chance that it got done before the end of the season and that they were able to bring him back, that, you know, they would still be in his good graces, and that's what I mean, be in his good graces, and that at the end of the season they would rework the contract, because he's due to make $14 million next year, and that maybe they would have a little bit of leverage to bargain with him, saying, hey, Adrian, we gave you $6 million last year when it didn't look like you were going to play it down for us. You know, now why don't you return the favor, and why don't we sit down at the table, and why don't we hammer out a new contract, because there's no way we're paying you $14 million, and there's no way another team in the NFL is going to pay you $14 million. I have to think that's why they did it.
Yeah, he's damaged goods right now, and like somebody always used to tell me, not about me, but tell me, is that there's a reason they call it dope.
Well, and you want to smoke weed, you want to smoke weed, that's fine. But don't do it when it's literally going to cost you millions of dollars, because what's going to happen now, what I think is going to happen now, is the Wills are going to try and recoup that money. Right. Because there's no way he's playing it down in the NFL now. And what the Wills are going to do is say, hey, you know, we gave you that, we put you on that commissioner's exempt list with the idea in mind being that you'd behave yourself and you wouldn't do anything to further jeopardize your ability to get back on the field. So now it could get ugly between Peterson and the Vikings, and they could and the Wolves could try and recoup that money. That's one way this works out. The other way being that Peterson goes through the legal problems. I mean, I don't think, and I'm not a great legal mind, I'm not going to pretend to be, I can't see a scenario where Peterson's in jail beyond next July.
Right. That's the question I have. If they revoke his bond, is it possible that he actually ends up behind bars and Minnesota is scot-free at that point?
Yeah, and I think the Vikings at that point are going to have really 2 options, and I don't know if this is a violation, if this is collusion at all. I don't think it is. But at that point, Minnesota's really got to look at it one of 2 ways. They either have to look at it as, okay, is this a short-term thing with Adrian? Because if it is, let's get our $6 million back. We don't owe him anything. Let's get the money back. Let's move on. But if they talk to Adrian's agent, and say, hey, you know what, we did you guys a solid. Now we'd like you to return the favor. We'd like to see Adrian be a stand-up dude, and we'd like to see him significantly reduce his salary next season. Because I think at that point the Vikings then would be looking at bringing Adrian back next year. And that's really the only two ways it plays out. And I think you're going to have a strong indication of how it's going to play out over the next few weeks here. And I'm serious, it's going to play out that quickly, where if the Vikings decide to try and recoup that money, then I think you kind of have an idea of Adrian's future in the NFL. And he's going to have a future in the NFL. And let's be honest here, as stupid as this was, he can still, if he makes the right decisions and he handles this right from a PR standpoint and, of course, legally too, not that you should have a lot of faith in him to do that, there is a way for him to end up back on the field in Minnesota and for everybody to forgive and forget. That does happen. As sad as it is, it does happen in this country. And in some ways that's a good thing though too. But there's also a way that Adrian Peterson ends up on the field for a team next year. Either way, he's playing next year. It's a question whether or not it's with the Vikings beyond this season.